Hello there. My name is Jody Smith, and I am the Director of Career Development here at Central College. Today I am going to do a quick presentation on resumes and cover letters, and hopefully after today's virtual meeting you'll be able to have just a little bit better sense on how to set up your own resume and cover letter. To begin with this, I just want to take a moment to kind of talk about master resumes. Some of you may have never even heard of a master resume, but this is what here in career development that we like to refer to as your own personal resume. This is not a resume that you would ever want to share with any potential employer or organization. It is a resume solely for your own purpose. Consider it a running document that lists all the information that you have ever done. That includes every work experience, every volunteer experience, every leadership opportunity, legitimately every skill that you have. Anything that you have ever done that's career related should be on this document. Again, it's only for your reference. It's not something that you should share with employers. The reason we recommend that you have a master resume is right now it may be pretty simple to think about all the different things that you have done in terms of your career. However, as you get more experience, it will become more difficult to remember exact dates of when you were employed at certain places, the exact dates of when you did an internship experience, for example. So it's very handy to keep that running document, and then when you find a position that you want to apply for, you'll be able to pick and choose and pull from that document to create a tailored resume. Probably wondering what a tailored resume is, so let's have a quick discussion on what that is. A tailored resume is a resume that is tailored to the specific job that you're wanting to apply to. There's several reasons why you want to have a tailored resume. In the world of technology, a lot of our large companies, for that initial review of a job application and resume, it's not even an actual person that's looking at that resume, it's AI technology. And so if you are sending just a general resume out for employment, it's quite possible that you're getting kicked out before you even get to a live person, because that AI technology is looking for certain keywords, and if you're not using the same language verbatim as what's being requested in the job description, chances are you may be getting skipped over. So in terms of your tailored resume, how long do you guys personally think that a recruiter spends on a resume? It's probably much less time than you actually think. Any ideas? Well, it's basically under 30 seconds. So if you think about that, that's not a lot of time for you to be able to sell yourself. So you have a very limited amount of space to make an impression. So because of that, and because of AI technology, chances are you're not going to want to list every experience that you have. Instead, you're going to want to be very specific on the experiences that you had and think through logically of what you want to include. You're only going to want to list job experiences that are relevant to the key qualifiers in that job description. So only list what you believe addresses those keywords, those key qualifications. Legitimately, that job listing is going to be your best friend in terms of making up your resume, because it gives you a step-by-step guide of exactly what you need to include on your resume. In terms of resume styles, so since you guys are college students, chances are you're not going to have a ton of experience to put on a resume. And oftentimes students come into our offices all very concerned because they're like, I don't have any job experience. What am I supposed to put on a resume? And that's okay, right? Because for a professional like myself, my resume is very heavily experience-based, and it should be at this point in my career. However, with the student that's just beginning their career, your resume is probably not going to look like that. Instead, you're going to be more geared towards a skill-based resume, which is perfectly fine. For those skill-based resumes, it's for those who don't really necessarily have field experience yet, but they have a whole list of experiences that they can list that is relevant to the required skills of that job posting. So to give an example, if a job qualifier is looking for detail-oriented or time management, those are often very two key qualifiers on most positions. You may be able to list an experience where you led a project within the classroom and show that you had excellent time management skills because of that, because you led a group of 4 or 5 students through that project. You may be a college athlete, and so you developed a lot of leadership skills in that former manner. Maybe you are in theater and you took a lead role in one of the productions. There's a lot of different skills that you have to have for that as well. So your resume will be more skill-based at this point in time, and that's perfectly okay. As you get further into your careers, however, your resume will start to transition into a more experience-based resume. But at the end of the day, all this information that I'm sharing with you, you just need to understand that it ultimately is your resume. You can take my advice on what to list. However, you just need to do what you think best represents yourself, because my resume is not going to look like your resume. Your resume is not going to look like another student's resume. Your resume is specific to you and it needs to represent you. In terms of resume guidelines, so our department has worked very hard to try and get you a document that specifically breaks through everything that you need to have on a resume. So there are certain things that I'm going to go through today that 100% you need to have on your resume, and I will highlight those. There are other sections that you may or may not include on your resume, and it's solely dependent on your current situation. However, we did create this resume guideline worksheet for you, which is out on our My Central page. I highly recommend that you go out and reference this whenever you're creating your resume. You can also download this document. You can print it out if you need a copy, a physical copy. If you're like me and prefer physical copies, you can certainly come up to our offices and we can get you a copy of it as well. But as you'll see on this, it kind of breaks out each section for you. And again, I'm going to go through each section today with you, but to kind of give you the highlights, it goes through your headline section, so your name and contact information, your education information, course experience, if there's any relevant course experience, any work or volunteer experience, any activities or any type of involvement that way. And then on the right hand side there, you'll see like where it has kind of a description on the layout. So, what type of font size, the bullet points, really some good formatting guidelines that I highly recommend that you follow, which are pretty standard across organizations and companies in terms of standards for resumes. But again, we'll go through each of these in more detail. To really just start out straight from the top, it is 100% pertinent that you provide your name and contact information. What you need to include is your name, okay? Your street address, city, state, and zip. A lot of times students will ask us, well, what address do I need to put on there? Do I need to put my permanent address on there, or do I put my Central College address on there? I recommend you look at where you're applying for the position. So if you're applying for a position in the Pella area, I would list your Central College address. If you are from Illinois, for example, and you're applying for an internship or a position after you graduate and you plan on living in Illinois, I would probably list your Illinois address. A phone number, right? I know everybody has a cell phone, but my question to you is your voicemail set up? Is it empty if it is set up? The last thing that you would want to have happen is an employer try to contact you and not able to leave you a voicemail because you don't have your voicemail set up or your voicemail inbox is full. They are not going to text you. They are going to cold call you, and if you do not answer and they're not able to leave a voicemail, they will move on to the next person. An email address. Again, a lot of times students say, should I put my central email account address or should I do a personal email address? I tell students, use the address that you check the most often. And if it's a personal email address, make sure that it's an email address that you would not be afraid for an employer to see. Okay, we have had examples that it's been a personal email address from when they were in high school and they thought it was funny at the time, and now it's, not necessarily a funny email address any longer. So just kind of be mindful of that as well. LinkedIn or a web page. If you have a LinkedIn profile, I highly recommend you put that address of that LinkedIn profile on your resume only if you actually have your LinkedIn profile completed. If you have just created the LinkedIn profile based off of a class requirement where it's got your name, may or may not have a photo and says that you're a Central College student, not necessarily something you want to put on a resume, right? Because it's not giving that employer any actual information about you. However, if you have put your time and effort into that LinkedIn profile, then I would list that on your resume, okay? We will be providing another training on LinkedIn profiles as well. So if you don't have one set up and you would like to, something I highly encourage you to do, don't fret. We have another presentation on that. To give you an example though of how your name and contact information should look, here's an example for you. So you'll see the person's name is Ginger Snap. It's the largest portion of that contact information. And then directly below that is their address, and below that is their email address, phone number, and then LinkedIn profile. This is just one way to list your information. But you'll notice that it's very neat and consistent. And so that's what I highly recommend is you take a look and make sure that it's pleasing to the employer's eye when they look at it, and it contains all that pertinent information, your name, your address, phone number, email, and if you have that LinkedIn profile, list that as well. In terms of the sections and the headers that you should include on your resume, 100% you should list your education on your resume. We typically tell our college students that you do your name and contact information first, and then directly below that, you provide your education experience. Should you or should you not list your high school education? I recommend that as long as you're still enrolled in college, that you do go ahead and list your high school education, because that is the most recent degree that you have received. Once you graduate from college, it's perfectly okay to remove your high school diploma off your college or off your reference or resume page. In terms, and we'll kind of go through what you need to list for each of these sections. You also should have an experience section. So whether that's your volunteer experience, working experience, will be dependent on your personal situation, but 100% you should include an experience section. A skills section. Again, because your guys' resumes are going to be more based off of skills versus experience at this point, you really need to include a skills section. And then any licenses and certifications. So if, for example, you're an education major, you are going to want to list your licenses and certifications for that education major, specifically if the position requires it. And then some sections that you should consider. And again, it's dependent on your personal situation. Maybe you have relevant coursework that you've completed. Maybe you have additional training that you've done. Maybe you have some extracurricular activities that you've been part of. Maybe you've had a leadership role on campus. Maybe you've received some honors or awards that are relevant to the position you're applying for. Maybe you're a STEM major and have done extensive research and even publicized some of that research or published some of that research. And even more so, maybe you have some professional affiliations that you're a part of and you want that employer to know about. All of those things are relevant information if they're pertinent to you and pertinent to that job position. And so I recommend you kind of take a look at that job description and see, do I need to include relevant coursework? Should I include some training? Those types of things. We also have an excellent online resource for you here in Career Development. It's called Backpack to Briefcase. It is on our My Central Career Development page. It is a very long document, I'll warn you, but it breaks down every possible thing that you would ever need to know in terms of completing a resume, a cover letter, interview skills, job searches, It's a really great document. It has a lot of examples in there for you as well. So I do recommend that you take a look at it. It's hyperlinked here, but again, it's on our My Central page and it'll be listed under the resources at the bottom of this video as well. In terms of what to include in these certain sections, so for the education, 100% you need to include the name of the institution. You need to include the location of the institution. So, for example, you all go to Central College. We all know where Central College is, but if you're applying for a position, say in California, that employer may not know where Central College is, so it's important that you list the city and the state that the college is in. Your anticipated graduation date, what your degree is, what your major is, if you have a minor, and then your GPA. We recommend that if your GPA is a 3.0 and above, you go ahead and put that GPA on your resume. If it's below a 3.0, we kind of recommend for our students not to list that on their resume. It's preference, but that's kind of the feedback we've gotten from the employers is if it's above a 3.0, go ahead and put it on that resume. To the right here, you'll see an example. So you'll see that I bolded the title education and underlined it, so you can clearly see that this is my education section. And then below there I listed my college education, so you'll put that first. And so I put Central College, located in Pella, Iowa, my anticipated graduation date, my degree, and my major directly below that, and then my GPA out of a 4.0 scale. It is important to do that. Specifically if, for example, either maybe at your high school or maybe you studied abroad and you're an international student and that GPA scale is not out of a 4.0, it's important to list what the scale is for that employer. And then you'll see there below there I listed the high school education. Again, it's okay to remove that once you receive your degree here at Central. In terms of what you should list for experience in that experience section, there's a variety of ways that you can do this. So what I do recommend that you include is your job title, the name of the organization, the location of that specific employment or volunteer experience, the dates in which you completed that experience, and your bullet statements. So we will go through bullet statements in depth here in a few minutes. Because that is really the meat of your resume, and I'll kind of explain like what you need to include in those bullet statements. But what I will tell you right now is for each job experience, you should have at least 2 bullet statements for each, okay? To the right there, you'll have an example. It's kind of small, so you may not be able to see it very well, but again, this presentation will be linked in the resource section directly below this video, and then it's also available on our My Central page, but you'll see where again I have the same bolded and underlined section. It matches the education section, it says work experience, and then below there I put that I was a front desk attendant, where I worked, what department, what the college was, the location, and the dates that I did it, and then it also lists those bullet statements below. And then below there I had another job experience, and then below the work experience, I have volunteer experience. I do have these separated out. You do not have to. So for example, if you don't have a ton of paid employment experience, but you have a lot of volunteer experience, it's okay just to put experience or related experience. For example, you do not have to break it out between work experience and volunteer experience. I just did that there. But getting into what type of experience could you potentially list on your resume? Here are some examples, okay? You can list your employment, previous employment, and I recommend that you do that. Any internships that you've done, whether they're paid or unpaid, you don't need to indicate on the resume if it was paid or unpaid. Any fine arts or performing arts experience that you have. Are you an athlete? Put it on there. Did you study abroad? List that. Any campus activities, leadership roles that you may have, any volunteer experience, again, any affiliations you may have, any service learning or community engaged learning experiences that you've done here at Central, definitely list those on there. You really want to kind of look through that job listing and kind of think through all the experience that you have and think, how does the experience I have tie me to that position? Excuse me. And just kind of think through that. So maybe you did in a community engaged learning experience that directly ties you to the specific nonprofit that you're wanting to apply to. For example, you would most definitely want to list that experience on there. Maybe you don't had a job at a part-time gig at the state fair, and maybe that's not relevant to anything that that job description indicates, and so it's okay to leave that experience off there. Again, that's where we kind of go back and forth between that master resume that lists everything and then the tailored resume for that specific position. Getting into, excuse me, getting into writing strong bullet statements. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to do this, but I also fully understand how difficult this is as a college student. In terms of structure of bullet statements, we kind of break it out here. You need to have that action verb in the beginning, plus the task that you did, plus the result equals that bullet statement. So example, you want to explain what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and what was the result if possible. We have those power verbs or those action words, a whole slew of them and examples listed out in the Backpack to Briefcase on page 28 and 29 that I recommend that you take a look. Again, that resources will be tagged in the video or below the video here. It's also available on my Central. To give you some examples of strong bullet statements, on the left is typically a statement that we'll see initially when college students come in to meet with us to have a resume review, and then hopefully by the end of that review we kind of get them over to the right side in terms of their bullet statement. So I'll just read the first one. So this is in terms of an education major. So more often than not, we'll see a resume that says assisted with an after-school program. Cool, tells me what they did, not bad. But I try to get the student more so towards the right side, where it says partnered with staff to develop and implement an after-school intervention program that resulted in a 50% decrease in post-school discipline referrals. That's a much stronger statement. In that statement, I told them what I did, how I did it, why I did it, and most importantly, what the result was. I packed a whole lot in one statement. And so I challenge you to look at your resumes and say, where are my bullet statements falling? Are they more on the left side or am I more towards the right side? If you're more on the left side, please see our office and we can definitely get you to creating a much stronger bullet statement that's going to hopefully get you that interview, okay? In terms of a resume versus a cover letter, oftentimes students will ask us, well, what's the difference? I'm not entirely sure. Resume is really just a list of all the things that you've done. It's a quick snapshot of your experience and your skills, right? The cover letter is where you have the opportunity to expand on those experiences and really connect those dots. For the employer, I often tell students this is the space where if you listed something on your resume that is not easily directly connected to that job listing, this is the time to connect those dots for that employer. So you let them know how your experience matters or why it matters and how it relates to that job. And so in terms of how do you even begin writing a cover letter, right? Before you even start, I cannot emphasize enough that you need to research the company, right? You need to research the company because that shows them that you are actually interested in them, not just getting a job, okay? You also need to understand the industry. So I oftentimes give this an example. If you are a communications major, your cover letter is going to read very differently than if you are a computer science major, right? Computer science major is more like to the point. They want to get directly to the point, where a communications major is probably going to use a lot more flowy type language, right? And so you really need to know your industry when you're getting ready to write that cover letter. And how do you research the company? So I can't Every company's a little bit different, but in today's age, I would say most companies have a website. And on that website, there's guaranteed going to be an about us or about the company section that's going to list out their mission, their vision, their values, or just a little bit of history about that company. And you're going to want to use that in your cover letter. Let me show you how. So in terms of your introduction, should be one paragraph, first paragraph. You're going to provide your name, your background experience, the title of the job that you're applying. That's going to be your first sentence. So for example, I wrote, my name is Betty White, and I'm a recent Central College graduate in communication studies with 3 years of experience in journalism, and I'm applying for the communication coordinator role at ABC Company. So in that, I provided my name, my background experience, and what job I was applying for. This is where researching that company comes in. That second sentence, I write, ABC's company's values of integrity is an attribute I carry with me in my own work. So in that sentence, very brief, but I showed them that I researched the company and why I'm going to be a good fit for that company. So I've already tied myself directly to that company. So that's your intro paragraph. Your body paragraphs can be 1 to 3 paragraphs. It's ideally 2 paragraphs, but it's dependent on your personal situation. This is where you're going to tie yourself directly to that job description. Okay, this is extremely important. You need to match the criteria in the job description to your actual relevant experience. This is where you connect those dots, right? So for example, I wrote, the job description indicates a need for time management skills. Okay, that's what's in the job description. I provide, as a project manager for a social media campaign for my marketing class, I utilize my time management skills to coordinate group member deadlines. This is great because not only did I address what they're asking for word verbatim in the job description, I explained how my skills that I developed in my college education make me a good suit for this position. So maybe I don't have a ton of job experience, but I'm showing that my college education has provided me the experience that I need to get this position. Excuse me. I hyperlinked a University of Iowa example. It's an excellent example. They provide a brief job description, and then they show you a cover letter that they wrote based off that job description, and then they actually bold within that job description and cover letter where they pulled things from. That example is also on our My Central page. I will link it below in the video too. I highly recommend that you take a look at that when you're getting ready to write a cover letter. All right. In also talking about what you put in those body paragraphs, this is where you're going to talk about your experience in terms of what you did and what the results were. It should not be a direct copy and paste from your resume. The employer's already looked at your resume. They do not want to see it again in the cover letter. This is really where you have the place to include more detail, right? Because that resume is just a short bullet statement, direct and to the point. The cover letter is where you have that opportunity to expand. So, for example, I provided, while studying abroad in Germany, I took additional German courses 2 times a week, which allowed me to move from a beginner to an intermediate German speaker. More than likely on my resume, I put that I was an intermediate or German speaker, right? Just listed it, which is great. So that tells them that, I'm bilingual, right? However, in my cover letter, I just further explained that and said, I took it upon myself to take additional German classes. This wasn't required of me. I took it upon myself because I was that invested in learning German, which is providing a completely different picture, right, to the employer. And so this is just one example of how you broaden that resume and just kind of talk about things more in detail and really start to sell yourself. And again, I can't emphasize enough, your experiences just don't need to be work experiences. They can be any type of experience that you have. Volunteer experience, extracurricular activities, leadership experience, all those things. Your conclusion paragraph usually is 1 to 2 paragraphs. Ideally, it's one. This is where you're going to summarize everything, right? It's going to where you summarize your key skills and your accomplishments. You review your main points of that cover letter. Explain again why you're of value to that company. So, for example, I put, from my previous internship in marketing to the exceptional communication skills I've gained through service work for my local church, I would be a great fit for communications coordinator role at ABC Company. So I reviewed my key skills and my accomplishments, and then again, I tied myself directly back to the position. And then your final sentence should be thanking the employer for their time. So I put, thank you for taking the time to consider my application. I look forward to hearing from you soon. And then you sign it, and that is your cover letter. A couple of key things to remember though. Grammar and spelling are extremely important. If you are applying to several positions at once, I cannot emphasize enough that you need to make sure that cover letter actually says the name of the employer that you're applying to and the name of the position you're applying to. I've had several resumes and cover letters come across my desk in the past that resume looks great, and then I get to the cover letter and it says, hello, I'm applying for this position at a completely different company than what I was working for. And that clearly told me that they're applying for several positions and they were not detail oriented enough and did not care enough to make sure that letter had Central College's information on it. It had a completely different school's information on it. And so immediately I was like, nope, I'm done, next. And I threw that application out, even though they may have been extremely qualified. Do your research. Again, research the company or the organization you're applying to. It will pay off. It takes time, but I guarantee you it pays off. And then that job description or job posting is your best friend. So make sure you utilize it. Make sure you read it word for word. And then do your best. If there are mandatory qualifications and they say time management skills, specifically reference time management skills in that cover letter and in your resume, okay? Because they're hunting for those keywords. Maybe they're using AI technology that's solely looking for those keywords. So it is very important that you use the exact language that's listed in that job description. In terms of resources, so again, I have thrown a lot of information out at you today, but all of this information is out on our My Central page. So if you go to My Central, hover over the menu up top where you'll see where it says Academics. That drop down will come down, and then you click on Career Development. From there, you will see a resume button that you'll be able to click on. That's where you'll get your resume guidelines. We have a resume building worksheet, which is an excellent worksheet to help you kind of gather all the information that you need. There are sample resumes out there that are not in PDF form. They're actually in Microsoft Word form, so you don't have to worry about that editing and converting, formatting issues. Backpack to briefcases out there. You can schedule an appointment with me. So hopefully you all know what Handshake is. If not, check out one of our other videos on Handshake, but you can schedule an appointment with me via Handshake. I am more than willing to meet with you to review your resume, to help you write your resume. If you're looking to apply to a position and you want somebody just to do a quick overview, you can schedule an appointment with me and I'll look at that resume. You can email it to me and I'll provide my feedback to you. Or you can just drop by our offices. We welcome walk-ins. So we are on the second floor of Geisler Library. So when you come to the top of the stairs, instead of turning left to go to the library, you turn right. And our offices are there. So please, please come see us. And again, make an appointment with me today if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can schedule an appointment on Handshake, walk-in, whatever is best for you. Send us an email. But again, thank you and have a great day.